you guys to go. But, all right, so um, probably older reference lost on younger people, but anybody remember Wayne's World from Saturday Night Live? Okay. So it was funny as I went through a lot of my trainings, like if I'm doing a corporate training and I have 20 or 30 people in a room and I'm training a company, there'd always be a few different things, questions and statements people would have that I would come up with my own rules. So I've kind of developed a few of them to go through it. And those of you who've watched me before know that my style is to be a storyteller. What I mean by that is we remember stories more than we do statistics. So my first rule is systems work. People fail to work systems. Get a system. If I'm sitting in a room and I say to a bunch of salespeople, hey, describe for me on a vanity license plate what your selling system is, most guys would be wing it, show up, throw up. They don't have a systematic approach, but we do know that the prospect has a systematic approach. First thing the prospect does is they mislead about their true intentions. Second, they try and steal as much information from you as they can. They want to be an educated consumer, and then they TIO, third base, they commit to nothing, then they run home and hide. They have a system. The problem is most salespeople don't have a system. Most salespeople, when I ask them what their system is, they say, well, people buy from me because they like me. And I say, well, then if they don't like you, you couldn't make a sale. So how much time do you spend on getting them to like you? So let me tell you the story I have about systems for this rule. When I was 17, I did a stupid thing. I decided I wanted to jump out of an airplane. So at that time, they didn't have the tandem chutes. It wasn't that kind of a system. It was more of you actually jumped out with what first were like static line, like the old World War II movies where the guy clips on and you jump out, you shoot out. But when I signed up for it, and I know it sounds terrible at that time, it was $60 for 5 jumps. So, but I said, hey, that sounds great. I'd sign up for it and down over in Central Illinois, and they said, but you got to go to jump school first. I said, okay, what's that all about? And they go, you got to go 6 hours of jump school. So on a Saturday, I went for 6 hours, and they taught you things like they put us in the like the harnesses you would see the for the parachute, but they put us up on a ladder about 3 feet off the ground, and they had us strapped into this harness, and they had us practicing releasing the harness. And I said, what are you doing? We want you to fall out of it. And they, well, what do you mean? He says, well, if your main chute doesn't open, we want you to try and unclip it so that it flies away. And then when you pull your emergency chute, it doesn't get tangled in the other one. So we sat there just trying to do this, trying to get the clips undone. Then they had us practice on a real airplane, a Cessna 150, sitting in the back of the airplane and crawling out and getting up to the edge of the airplane and putting your foot on the step outside, and you reach on the strut, and you're supposed to push yourself off into this arch so that you don't tumble and fall. They practice. So for about 20 minutes, we just practiced trying to jump out of this airplane on the ground, try and do that. And then they taught us things like, hey, you have a altimeter here on your wrist, and you're going to be jumping from only about 2,000 feet. And we want you to just start getting used to static line, because you're going to do about 2 or 3 static line where you only jump about 2,000 feet. Then we're going to take you up and you're going to do, a large about 10,000 feet. You get a lot of time of free fall. But, you're falling at 120 miles an hour. What they're saying is, look at your altimeter. If you haven't pulled, if your main chute doesn't open, your emergency chute doesn't pull your emergency chute by 1,800 feet. At 1,800 feet, you're falling 120 miles an hour. That's your last chance to pull the emergency chute. So 6 hours of learning how to jump out of an airplane for a 30-second basically fall. And I said, wow, to my jump master, I said, wow, with the system this good, anybody ever get killed here? And he goes, oh, yeah. And he takes me over to the ground and almost looked like a chalk outline of a body laying on the ground. And he goes, yeah, last week a girl got killed here last week. Well, what happened? He says they found her like this, trying to unclip. She never opened up either chute. Her main chute didn't deploy, and she never opened up even her emergency chute. She hit the ground with her trying to get the clips undone. But remember, what they taught you is no matter what, at 1,800 feet, pull that chute, because you don't have a choice for the emergency. She never even opened her emergency chute. My point is systems work. People fail to work systems. A selling system that we teach you works. It's just that people kind of revert back to the old ways of doing things, show up and throw up, benefits and features. And so my second rule, don't sell benefits and features. What I mean by that is your feature of your company is important. It's important to you that you represent a good company, have a good product or service. But what's important to the client is, can you solve my problem? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this next section, and then we'll kind of stop and talk about whatever comments or questions you guys have. But let me get this concept through first. We are taught to read from left to right, correct? I mean, when you're a kid and you open up and you learn to read, Dick and Jane, Run, See Spot, we learn to go from right to left. So what has happened is, what people do is they start with, hey, let me tell you about the feature of my company and convince you why it's a benefit. Isn't that what most sales is about? The feature of the company and why it's a benefit. What you should think about is, what is the feature of your company? Whatever bullet point that you have on your website, your brochures, most I did a study of over 200 businesses with Metropolitan Builders Association in Milwaukee, and every one of them on their website said something about, we've been in business since 1927. We've been in business for 14 years. We're a family business. Okay, that's the feature. But why is that a benefit to the customer that you've been in business since 1970? Well, what we're implying is credibility. We've been in business for a long time. We know what we're doing. That's what you're implying, and assume that the client makes that connection from, we've been in business since 1970, or I've been a realtor for 20 years. Okay, but what problem does that solve for the client? Why is that a benefit that you've been in business for a while? So think about it this way. What is the feature of your company? Okay. What benefit is that feature to the prospect? And then what problem does that really solve for the prospect? So what I want you to do is start thinking about taking every one of your features and benefits and go backwards, go from right to left, and think about, how can you put the feature in a question format to get the prospect to affirm that they need the feature. Something like, suppose I said, my training features ongoing reinforcement, because it's really hard to go to a training session and in one day observe, do you think I can really solve somebody's sales problems in one day? So would it make sense if I told you that any training I do consists of ongoing reinforcement? And if it did, if we did ongoing reinforcement training on my systematic approach, that would help you how? See, that's what I want you to do. Is your features and benefits are important, but sometimes we just get in love with them and we post them on a website, we post them on a brochure, and we think that's it. But why is that feature important to the customer? What problem does it solve? And how can you put it in a question format? So the exercise I want you to do is, every one of you take every one of your features and benefits and put it in a question format so that the client affirms that, yeah, I need that. Because remember, I don't have the rule up here, but I should put it in here. Prospects only believe half of what you tell them, but 100% of what they say. We tend to not argue with our own data. I'll argue with yours, but if I say that feature is important to me, then it really is. If you as a salesperson try and convince me that it's a benefit to me, I'm probably going to argue with your data, but I won't argue with mine. So how can you take your feature and benefit? So at this point, anybody got a feature other than what I already did before? I've been in business since 20 years. Tell me what a feature is of your company. What's the major feature? What separates you? What's really something that you want? And let's see if we can just, put it in a question format to get the client to. Anybody got one that they want to tell me what the feature of their company is? What's on your bullet point? What's on your website? What's on your brochure?
I listen to my clients.
You listen to your clients, Janelle? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm a good listener.
Okay. So how would you put that in a question format? I mean, that's important. Now, why is that? Why is listening to your customer? What problem does that solve typically for somebody? Any thoughts on that? What's the problem that solves that you're a good listener compared to somebody else in your field?
That I understand what they're asking for.
Okay. No mutual mystification. Right. Instead of just assuming, oh yeah, I've done designs for people like you. I know what you're doing and just assuming it. You listen because there might be something different about that person, and you don't assume, you immediately know what their problem is and that you can solve it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great feature. And the benefit is I might end up getting a better design, or I might get a better product from you than a competitor who already has a one size fits all, already knows what the solution is. That fair? Would that be fair? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. How now? How would you put that in a question?
Um, Anybody help?
Well,
No, uh,
you can always start with suppose I said.
yeah,
Suppose I said, my customers typically tell me what makes me unique is that I really do a good job of listening instead of just coming up with a one size fits all. And if that was the case, that I really did a better job of listening to you, that would help you how?
okay.
See, now you get the client to say it instead of you. Again, what I'm trying to get you to understand, everybody, is your feature benefit is important. But again, we got to think about what problems that solve and how do we get the client to say it's important. Okay. That was a good one, Janelle. I like that one. Okay. Anybody else wanted to do one?
One I always share is that, well, when I'm selling benefits and features, is that we have dedicated project managers for a project.
Okay. You have dedicated project managers.
Mhm.
And we're going to be able to dig into this one real well. I like this one. Okay. Okay. Now, why is that a benefit to the customer?
Because they have one person to go to throughout the whole project who's communicating with them what's happening, what's going to happen throughout the project on a daily and weekly basis.
Right. They have only one person to deal with
Mhm.
instead of being confused and every day have to talk to somebody different about the project. All right. What potential problem does that solve that they only have one person to deal with?
The hassle of dealing with a lot of people.
Look, it expedite the process instead of a delay of trying to find somebody else or have it go through explaining the process to one project manager and then having to explain it to another, so it can tighten up the whole process instead of stretching it out and have some. Okay, so that's a good one. So now how could you put that in a question format?
I want to go with the suppose I said that we have a dedicated project manager for your day-to-day communication throughout the project. How would that help you?
Yeah, now see, that's what I'm glad you said that, because I got to get you to do it the other way around. Most salespeople would say that. How would that help you? And it sounds all like, you want to save money, don't you?
Uh-huh.
When you end it with that would help you how? Now
Uh-huh.
that creates, the client has to think about it, and they're answering that your benefit and feature fits a need that they have. So that if we have a dedicated one person assigned to your project to help eliminate miscommunication, that would help you how? So all we're trying to do is, it's very obvious, but we're just trying to get the client to say it instead of us saying it. Because go back to my rule, they only believe half of what you tell them, but 100% of what they say. This whole exercise is about getting the client to say they need your feature or benefit, not you telling them. And so really, this one really works when you guys go home and you do it and you take every one of your features and benefits and just put it in a question format. It's just really fun, because now when you meet and you do your presentation, remember, we go through the steps of the bond report, the upfront contract, the pain, the budget decision. And now I do my presentation pitch. It doesn't sound like a pitch. It sounds like a consultant, because that's what a consultant would do. Anybody else want to do one? Ben, any of your groups want to try one? And if I'll help you out if you.
Let's see. Oh, turn it off. Oh, turn it off.
Anybody got, what's the
There we go.
feature of your?
We're done with lunch, so we'll,
Okay, no, that's all right. You could add just a microphone if you don't want to have the,
Yeah, no, we're done. So our, I would say our feature, we are passionate about old turn of the century homes and we exist to preserve craftsmanship.
you're passionate about, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
We have a passion for old traditional turn of the century homes and
Oh,
our saying is that we exist to preserve craftsmanship.
okay. Now, what problem would that solve for me that you have this passion?
That so majority of people that call us because of that. So they have a home that they want to care for and preserve and enhance the home while respecting
Okay,
the
makes sense.
architectural features of their home.
Got it. So that's the feature that you guys have expertise in preserving craftsmanship of older style, older traditional homes. That's the feature.
Right.
All right. So the way you would put that in a question form, and again, it doesn't have to be a short question, it could be almost a monologue of saying, suppose I said, this isn't our first rodeo. We have a passion for helping restore older buildings and follow, the tradition of craftsmanship. Suppose I said, that's our passion. I'm just curious, that would help you how?
You said the last thing you said that would help you how?
Yeah, that would help you out.
Okay.
Suppose I said we have a passion for this. We have a passion and this isn't our first rodeo. We've done this before. But if that's the case, that we have this experience, I'm just curious, that would help you how? And like the client say, well, somebody else might try it and they don't have the experience you have. Now they said it, not you. It's so much more powerful when they say it instead of it you telling somebody and it just hangs there like a dangling participle. When you say to somebody, hey, Ben, we have a passion. I have a passion for taking people and teaching them, sales techniques, because I really believe that sales is a noble and honorable profession. If I just make a statement, it just hangs there. But if I finish with a question, I said, and if that's it, if my passion came through in my training, that would help you how? And let the client say it. Does that make sense? You guys getting it?
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit there and I can do benefits and features and all that, but really what happens is, again, when we talk about some of these rules, and one of these going down a little bit here further is prospects don't buy your product or service. They buy solutions to their pain. And again, it's pain selling. What is the pain that they have? Traditional selling is benefits and features. And those of you who've been through a little bit of Sandler training or Socratic selling, Tom Hopkins, Anthony Pernelli, great stuff. But most of the newer training is about how to take the feature of your company and have the client restate that that's important instead of you telling them. Because in one of my other rules, if you're telling, you're not selling. If you're sitting there telling the client and you're just a human brochure regurgitating what's on your website or brochure, you're not selling. You're just, hopefully you're running enough stuff against the wall, enough benefits and features. But, I'll, and I think I did this for Mark, but for the rest of you haven't heard this before. If I've got a group of people sitting in my room, I'm doing a training for 30 people. I might stop one and say to one guy, hey, tell me why I should buy from your company. Why should I buy from your company? And customers ask you that all the time. And he goes, oh, we've been in business since 1932. We're the largest, greatest, most improved. So today you're telling me you're the best. They go, oh yeah, we're the best. So, well, here's the problem. I talked to your sales manager and after lunch, they're going to fire you. But don't worry, I've got you set up with your biggest competitor on Monday. You can start on Monday with your biggest competitor. Now who's the best? See, isn't the best company is the one we work for? And the customer knows that, because if you're telling the customer you're the latest, greatest, most improved, what they're thinking is you're only telling me that because you work for that company. If you work for the competitor, you tell me they're the best. So you see why benefits and features don't work as well anymore, because the clients are so much better at understanding a sales process than we are. They sit there and say, oh, you're only telling me that because that's your company. Why is the other company better? Got it? Anybody else on this one? Val, anything that's a feature of your real estate business that makes you separate and better than anybody else?
I knew you were going to ask me. I didn't want to go.
Well, play full out. There we go. Yeah.
I am taking lots of notes. So I think that, I know you said this is not something that's, I don't know exactly what you said, but I think that with Nancy, and I'm sorry she's not here, but her years of experience in real estate, to me is an incredible feature and a benefit to the prospect. So I think asking a prospect, wouldn't you like to work with someone who's experienced every kind of house sale you can imagine, has had experience in every,
And the answer would be, oh, of course.
right.
But how, again, so then you get to say that would help you how? If you were able to work with a realtor that's got years and years of experience, has been through dealing with different, building home inspectors, been dealing with different mortgage companies, understands the market, understands your community, really understands what's important to you, other than just saying, location, location, location. But if we had years of experience, that would be beneficial to you how? So you can rephrase it any way you want, but that would be
Right.
beneficial to you how? And let the client say, well, yeah, I've dealt with that before where I went to, a new real estate guy and he didn't understand really what the school district was all about.
Right.
It's all about getting them to say it, no matter how you do it. And if it takes a while, through my system to get used to it, all you're trying to do is make sure, how do I get the client to say it instead of me?
Right. Right.
But it can be worded that way. Your benefits and features are important. I'm not saying that. It's how you present them and how do you
Right.
get the client to say it. Okay, you ready to move on, folks, or you want to stay on this one for anything? I just recommend take every one of your features and benefits and try and put it in a question format to get the client to say, yeah, I need that. That's what I want. That solves this problem for me. Okay. All right. My next rule is this one. When I do a lot of trainings with engineers, a lot of people that I don't want to be a salesman. I mean, really, how many people grow up, I can't wait to grow up to be a salesman, right? But we all do, because again, my definition of sales is just influencing people to a mutually beneficial decision. One that helps you go to the bank for you and your family, and one that helps financially the client or helps leave the client in better condition. What more noble profession could there be? Sales is just influencing people to a mutually beneficial decision. And you are a pushy salesman anytime you're selling for your reasons instead of the client's. So again, story, I'm doing a training at the Anatole Hotel in Dallas for about 3,000 insurance agents. And when Troy McQuaid, the president, said, we're going to introduce Wayne Dean after the break, but I just want to let you guys know that we've extended the contest for the trip to Hawaii. So you guys got one more week to get policies sold to win the contest to go to Hawaii. And at the break, I heard one of the insurance guys, man, I'm selling everybody this week. I'm going to win that trip to Hawaii. I don't care if that got cancer, diabetes. I'm going to write every policy I can this week. And I went up and said, wait a second, what are you trying to do? And he says, well, they'll get their money back. If they're rejected, they'll get their money back. And I said, yeah, but the problem is if you fill an application on somebody, and even if they are not approved, the problem is that information is the MIB in Boston, the Medical Information Bureau in Boston. So all that information that they've been rejected now is in their records. And all that didn't help them at all. It helped you win a trip to Hawaii. You see my point? When you're thinking about, I got to make my car payment this week, or I got to do this, you're pushy. You're a pushy salesman because you're pushing for your reasons instead of the customers. Prospects buy for their reasons, not yours. And people buy in spite of the hard sale, not because of it. Does that make sense? So I think this is the reason why some people don't go into sales. They think they're taught to be a pushy salesperson. Don't take no for an answer. No's not an option. No is an option, right? So just don't be that kind of always sell for the prospect's reasons, not yours. Okay. And again, prospects don't buy your product service. They buy solutions to their pain. And if anybody's ever read the book, and I read several of them on Socratic selling, Socrates basically talked about solutions, how to offer solutions to people. People buy solutions to their problems. They're not buying your features and benefits. And most salespeople don't spend enough time talking about the problem. You'll make more sales in my system, not because you have a better product or service than your competition, although I hope you do, but you'll make more sales in my system, not because you have a better product or service, but because you ask more questions and you find a problem or a pain that the competition didn't find. And then it's kind of like I went to the doctor this morning for my knee. If I go through 3 doctors and none of them can tell me what's wrong, but the fourth one says, yeah, you have a torn meniscus and you broke off some cartilage, you need arthroscopic surgery. Is that the one I want doing the surgery? Or would I go back to the first one who was cheaper that didn't figure out what was wrong with me? Same thing in sales. When you find a problem and the client agrees they have the problem, they want to hire you to do it regardless of price. People don't buy on price, people buy on value. And you're part of that value proposition because you helped them solve a problem that somebody else didn't recognize. So you're in the pain business. You're in the business. You're not causing the pain, but you're asking a lot of questions to bring the pain to the surface. And then what you're doing is not only bringing the pain to the surface, you're getting the client to agree that it is a pain. You can't tell a client that they have pain. They won't believe you. How do you feel about that when somebody, you know what your problem is? Let me tell you what your problem is. When you do that, people resist. No, that's not a problem. They've got a client. And that's why I was talking about that first one up there, benefits and features and asking questions. All right. Any questions on that rule? Okay. All right. Again, we talked about this last week for the people who were on my call last week. Prospecting is job 1. Always have a prospecting awareness. What I mean by that is everybody in your company should always be carrying your business cards. And if you really think about it, do you have a prospecting awareness when you're out there and thinking about even the 3-foot rule? I get within 3 foot of somebody, they get my business card, not because they could use your product or service today, but they could in the future, or they might know somebody that needs your product or service. Your business cards are actually the cheapest way of advertising that's out there. But I ask most people, they have business cards. Oh yeah, where are they? They're in a drawer down here on the side. They got their 350 business cards still. What are they doing in the drawer? Are you thinking about out there all the time prospecting, right? That's job 1, because you're in the appointment making business. Without appointments, you're out of business, right? Every one of you've got to have, the more appointments you have, because when I ask the question, you could be more successful if you could just, and ask people how you would finish that. Number 1 answer to that is if I just had more appointments. That's the number 1 answer. And I say, why do you have more appointments? Well, because I got to do fulfillment and I got administrative stuff to do. All these other things end up being the priority as opposed to thinking about appointment setting as job 1. Every one of us is the of the marketing director of your company, because the marketing director is supposed to get leads, and then the appointment setter is the one who turns those leads into appointments, and then the salesman makes the sale and closes it, and then the project manager does fulfillment. And sometimes we wear all those hats, but the number 1 is doing the job of prospecting so that you have enough names to call to get the appointments you need. And what I mean by the next thing is have a prospecting wheel of fortune. You know, a wheel is only as strong as the number of spokes. If I have a bicycle wheel and that wheel has only got 3 spokes, it's going to collapse. So how many spokes do you have that you consistently can do every single week? How many spokes do you have? For example, I was meeting with a small business guy the other day who I said, okay, tell me what it is that you do to generate leads, to get new names. Oh, I go to networking events. What else do you do? Well, when I have time, I make cold calls. Okay, what else? Well, then I go on LinkedIn. And I said, all right, that, and what else? And he couldn't think of more than 3 things. And I said, well, do you put out yard signs? Oh yeah, I've been thinking about doing that. Well, how many? Well, gosh, I don't have time to put out 100 yard signs. You don't have to put out 100 yard signs. Just have a goal that every week I'm going to put out 5. Networking. I'm going to go to 2 networking events every week. I'm going to go and do referrals. I'm going to ask for 3 referrals every week. And the rule is on referrals, you can't ask for a referral unless you give them. So one of the rules you should be is, are you a matchmaker? Are you always trying to think about who can I match up this week? What businesses do I know should probably talk to each other? Am I consistently on a weekly basis referring people, whether it's through LinkedIn or Alignable or just face-to-face? Am I a matchmaker? Because when you start matching up other people, they feel obligated to you. So think about it. If you all can do this, just draw a wheel and put spokes. How many spokes do you have? And is that wheel strong enough Or do you need to add some things? And then once you do your Wheel of Fortune, then make a list of the behaviors you want to do every week. How many different things are you going to do? And the rule to me is I get to go home on Friday and have a guilt-free weekend if I checked off the behaviors I said I was going to do. Because think about it. You can't control whether somebody buys because you can't control whether somebody has pain. You can't control whether they have money, and you can't control whether they can make a decision, right? You can't control any of those things, but you can control how many people you approach. That's the only thing that you can control is how many approaches you make. And obviously, the more approaches you make, the more opportunities you have to see people. But it's kind of like, oh God, I got to get a sale this week. Well, you can't control that. You could see 10 people and none of them have any money, right? All you can control is, did you do the behavior to get in front of enough potential clients? So that's what I mean by having a prospecting wheel of fortune. Do you have that prospecting wheel of fortune? Is that wheel that you have strong enough to take you and your company to the bank? Because the bottom line of professional selling is going to the bank, not getting your emotional needs met. And again, here's what I mean by that one. If you need the approval, you need your prospect to tell you how great and how wonderful you are, and that makes you leave that appointment all pumped up. Would you rather leave with a check, or would you rather leave with the client thinking well of you? I think you'd all rather leave with a check. Sales is about going to the bank, not getting your personal emotional needs met of being a wonderful Mr. Nice Guy. I hope that happens along the way, but the primary purpose is, did you solve this person's problem? Did you go to the bank for you and your customer? Did you leave them in better condition than we found them? Along the way, then you'll get your needs met, not first thinking about it, about getting my emotional need being the greatest, wonderful. I don't want to be a pushy salesperson. That's great. None of us are pushy salespeople. I don't really know anybody that I've done training with that I consider a pushy salesperson. I just find people that don't have a systematic approach to an end result. They're great at presentations. They're great at giving presentation, but they don't follow system to either get the yes, the no, or a clearly defined next step. Remember, out of every opportunity with somebody, that's what you want. Either a yes, this makes sense. No, this doesn't make sense. Or at least let's schedule another appointment so we can do this again, whatever we need to go over. Okay. Comments at this point so far? Anything that I've skipped? Anything you want to talk about? And I'm going to send everybody this so you don't have to keep two notes. I'll send you all this list of my rules. Go ahead.
So I'd like to go back to appointment making. We've in the past been heavily qualifying our leads before making appointments, and I'm opening that up more to actually questioning them in different ways to see what, but what if an appointment isn't necessarily qualified for us? Like they want handyman work only, not the projects that we usually do.
But you schedule the appointment, then you add the question, you find out maybe they're not as qualified. Is that the question?
No, this is before making an appointment.
Like a
Their
first phone call and Deborah realizes it's not.
Well, remember, I always feel that you should go for the appointment.
Mhm.
Then you can always tell the client, hey, you know what? I forgot. We probably should move this out. This probably based on what you said, you're more of a handyman service. I'd rather get the appointment and then I decide whether we go any further or not. Because what happens is sometimes we talk ourselves out of the appointment because we think that it's not a fit and we dismiss the client too soon. And that's just my personal opinion, is I go for the appointment first and then I decide whether to go on it or not. And it's easy for me to call the client and say, hey, you know what, after further conversation, it probably doesn't make sense to meet next Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And they agree. Did that answer your question, or did I miss it? Again, miscommunication. Make sure I heard you correctly.
It's just a different mindset to me, because I'm so used to making sure that they're a good fit for what we do, that just to make an appointment feels wrong.
Well, and I think it's because
It's a paradigm shift. I understand.
Deborah's gotten programmed to where, she doesn't want to waste my time with a meeting if it's something that,
And she's still not, because she can still decide not to. It's still okay to tell the client, hey, after further conversations, probably this might be premature to go ahead and have that meeting next Wednesday. Why don't you do this? Especially if somebody says they're getting quotes. I'm talking to 3 different people. You know, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you go ahead and meet with some of those other people? I'll call you on Monday morning and then we'll decide whether it makes sense to schedule an appointment.
Yeah.
You can
And I
do
think that's the part we've never thought of, like, that feels awkward, but I mean, it makes sense, but it's in the
it.
past.
Anything new feels awkward until you try it a few times. Remember, role play with each other a few times first. Don't take some of these techniques and go waste it on a client the first time. I get it. Ben, any comments from your group now at any point yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
So-
All right. All right. All right. So remember, the object of sales is just to go home. You know, kind of like in baseball, the object of sales is to go home with a check. But like in baseball, you can't go home without first going to first, second, and third base in that order. So this technique I teach helps people understand where you're at in the system. Remember, the first step in my step up system of selling is the S is size up the situation. Who is this person? How does this person process information? Is this person a D, an I, an S, or C in the DISC profile? How does this person behave? Do your strong upfront kind of size up the situation is the first thing. Don't be guilty of premature presentation and rush right to the presentation. Who is this person? Second base is take them to their pain. Ask a lot of questions to really figure out what the pain is. Go back to what I said is you will make more sales because you find a pain that the competition didn't. So don't be so willing to rush into presentation yet. Extend that pain into the future. It is amazing. The number one motivator is to avoid pain in the future. It's why we all have insurance. We all have insurance to avoid pain in the future. So avoiding pain in the future, and it can be like person says, well, I want to remodel my basement so I can have everybody over for Thanksgiving dinner and I can watch football in my new remodeled rec room. Okay. Let's pretend it's 2 years from now. Do you see that changing in any way? Well, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, my mother-in-law is getting older. She might need to move in from 2 years from now. So would it make sense that as we design the basement, that besides we make a rec room, that maybe we make room to expand and put a bedroom in there in the future? Now, see, you just found a pain that maybe the competition didn't because you extended them into the future. Let's pretend is one of the best techniques you can do for extended pain in the future. Let's pretend it's 2 years from now. Describe for me how things might change in your world. Describe for me how things will be different because today you chose to buy from me. Got it? Extend the pain in the future. Then you can go to presentation. Make sure you follow the base path correctly and you go to first, second, third base. So again, to help cement this little story, my son was playing t-ball, and you know how little kids get up to t-ball and they have that ball on the stand and they hit the ball and everybody yells run, and every little kid steps around home plate, you know, doot, 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 and they run down the first base and they all jump on first base. You know, t-ball, if you've ever watched little kids do it, they all do the same thing. Well, Tyler's left-handed. So he gets up there and he swings and everybody yells, run, right? So he runs around first, the home plate and runs to third base. And everybody laughs at him. But if you think about it, he did the wrong way, right? If he went to third base and then second base and first, we'd all yell at him that he did it wrong. But isn't that what salespeople do? Don't salespeople go the wrong way? Don't salespeople say things like, oh, what's your problem? Oh, let me tell you how I can fix that, third base. Oh, by the way, do you have any money? Second base. And oh, first base, can you make the decision to spend the money? Most sales is backwards, isn't it? It's the client gives you a few little pains and then we jump in and can't wait to tell them how great we are and how we're going to solve their problem. But we don't find out, do they have any money and can they make a decision? Right? Again, people are motivated to action by the intensity of their pain. People are motivated to action by the intensity of the pain. You're not causing the pain, but you're asking more questions in competition so that they'll be motivated to action to buy your product or service. Couple more, and last one I want to hold on. This one is really important to me. Think about this. What if you're meeting with somebody and you weren't selling them? You were just a paid consultant to consult on giving them knowledge about a product or service, but you weren't selling a product or service. Wouldn't your presentation to them be completely different without having that added pressure of trying to close the deal? When you're in the presentation step, I want you to think about it that way. I'm a consultant. I'm going to be paid whether I sell my product or service. I'm just consulting on what's best for them based on what they told me or how they answered my questions. I think that is really a key for most salespeople. Instead of thinking, I've got to close this deal, I got to sell them. I'm a consultant. I am a trusted advisor. And everybody tells me that's what they want to come across as, a trusted advisor. But you don't present yourself as a trusted advisor. You present yourself as a salesman, selling for your reasons, not theirs. So think about that, how you can do it. And the last one for today, and just remember my story, mine can only handle as much as the butt can absorb, so we don't go too much longer. If you feel it, say it, but say it nurturingly. You know, express your feelings sometimes through a third party. When somebody you know is going to make a mistake by maybe going with a vendor that you know is about ready to file bankruptcy, you can say it, but hey, suppose I said, you know, I knew something about this contractor. I don't suppose you'd be interested in me telling you about that, because I had a client who, and you can tell Sue's sorry, they went with a different so-and-so. I knew that they were going to have issues. I didn't say anything. And then all of a sudden they couldn't get delivery. The person didn't have any money to be able to buy the product or service. I don't suppose you'd want to hear that story, would you? People can't get mad at you for doing something they gave you permission to do. So always ask permission if you're going to do a third-party story. Got it? That's one of my other rules. People can't get mad at you for doing something they gave you permission to do. So ask permission before you just jump into a story. Okay, those are my rules. I'm going to send those out to everybody. We'll continue over the next 2 weeks. We're going to do more rules. Ben, if you're interested in going further, as we talked before, the next step with your group is I'll do my own, onboarding to get you guys up to speed on my entire systematic approach to the step-up system that I've created. And we'll go from there. But at this point, I just think that this is a pretty good start for now. So again, little bits at the time. Every week we add a little bit more. Call me with those, for your hour of consultation, also one-on-ones if there's issues you have. And even if you don't, use me as a sounding board to brag. Hey, Wayne, I tried the technique. It worked. This really came up. I love hearing those stories too. So anybody got anything before I conclude?
Are you gonna do anything? I have a conference coming up at the end of September that I'm a vendor at. And so I don't know if there's different techniques for when you're standing behind a booth.
Oh
in a
yeah, I have a whole
table.
program on that. I can even send you the PowerPoint on working a trade show.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people won't do what I advise because it's kind of a little out of the norm. One of the things I do is instead of taking a full booth, I put a sign that said "Booth lost in transit. Ask me what we do." Do you have the guts, discipline, vitality to do that? Most people don't have the guts. They think they need that crutch of that beautiful, hey Google, stop. They have that crutch of that beautiful banner behind them and all that stuff. But yeah, Janelle, I've got a whole program I can send you, PowerPoint, and since you're going to be, it's on my agenda for a couple months out, my curriculum that I have. But
Yeah.
if you've got something coming up soon, we can do it earlier, just one-on-one between you and me.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anytime anybody's got anything that I hate to say, well, I'll get to that in 2 months. If there's an issue you have now, let's deal with it outside of this one-on-one. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, I'm going to end the recording. And sometimes that stimulates more questions when people say now that they're not being recorded. Yeah.